You are listening to episode 228 of the Comics Pals. We're a group of comic book journalists and friends who record a podcast together because we don't talk enough about comics in our daily lives.
I have a new conspiracy theory.
All right.
Sure.
I think secretly Zack Snyder is an employee for Disney.
Oh, some corporate espionage.
That's right. That's right.
Now, why Zack Snyder?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So I saw the images of Darkseid from the new Justice League that dropped this week, and it got me thinking. I believe that after we all watch Justice League, we will all be filled with so much grief that we will all turn to WandaVision to learn how to cope with that grief.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see.
So I think it's an elaborate ruse to get everyone to actually watch WandaVision.
So you're saying he's been, frankly, if this is the case, brilliant, right? Because this is now the man, he's taken a cut. He's getting paid by both Disney and Warner Brothers. He's taking home the big money to just deliver bad films, drive up Marvel stock.
Yeah, it's a stroke of genius, if you will.
Do you think he's also in cahoots with the fans who want to buy out DC, though, is the question?
Yeah, because obviously Disney's going to buy DC, right? That's the whole thing.
Well, I'll speak for Warner on that front. No, we are not in cahoots. This is a public statement from the company.
Yeah, I forgot you bought all those shares in Time Warner, Marco.
Bought the dip.
Of course.
So, and that's the other thing. I think the resolution you're going to see, the whole thing with Darkseid is always that Darkseid is. But I think the real solution here, the real anti-life matter equation, is that Zack Snyder is.
See, I would have thought that the real corporate spy would have been Joss Whedon, because he directed the Avengers films, and he came in and Disney had him point his racism right at Cyborg, and it ruined the whole thing.
We're losing the thread. Pull the plane up, Sean.
I sincerely hope that this is not the energy that we will be bringing into our watch-along for Zack Snyder's Justice League, which, of course, will be taking place in just a couple of weeks when the movie drops on the 19th. So if you guys want to watch that movie with us and hopefully not have to listen to Phil peddle his shit, you can do so by joining our Discord and getting all the details. We'll share it on social as well. So if you're over there, you can definitely keep up with us. And of course, we'll talk about it on the show continually as we gear up for that monumental 4-hour extravaganza. Very exciting.
4 hours of me peddling my shit.
Be like half an episode of the Comics Pals.
Half?
Yeah, I know what I said.
I'm contesting that I think it's more. Right?
The power creep on the Comics Pals. It's like, we're going to get up to 8 hours now, you're telling me?
An episode and a book club.
So, of course, there are plenty of things for us to talk about today. As ever, the comics industry never stops, and neither do we. We've got a bunch of different topics today. We've got some listener mail we're going to dive into here shortly. We also have an update about San Diego Comic-Con and what we can expect this year, including the promise of a physical event, if you can believe that. News about the Infinite Frontier beyond just the Zero issue that dropped this week. And in our main topic, we're going to be discussing, in light of WandaVision's finale, how not only comic book movies, but pretty much at this point, all geek culture has to manage fan expectations and frankly, entitlement as more and more people are engaging with this content beyond just the content itself. As these conversations expand and there's more discussion and people hype themselves up, what is the responsibility of the storyteller to manage that? So we've got a lot to get into today. But before we dive in, I do want to let you guys know where you can find us all over the web. Of course, we are the Comics Pals. Wherever it is that you choose to listen to us, please do leave us some kind of a like or a review, whatever it is on the platform that you are on. Get us on social media at The Comics Pals. You can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com if you want to share your thoughts with us. Of course, you can also do that if you are watching us on YouTube. Thank you for that. Leave us a comment like a few of you chose to do this weekend, or this week rather. You can also share the video with your friends and subscribe to our channel. All of those things are free to do, and they help us out a lot more than they cost you. I mentioned it earlier, but you can also join our Discord server where our TV party channel is lighting up with commentary about WandaVision. Everyone's excited. The finale has dropped. And if you want to hear our thoughts about that, of course, you can watch or listen to We Watched WandaVision. The finale of that show will be dropping, has already dropped, actually. So you can check that out if you are so inclined to do so. I do also want to quickly mention our latest book club. We did The Vision. It was awesome. Tom Kane, Gabriel Hernandez, Walter, and the crew did a tremendous job with that book. And if I do say so myself, we did a great job talking about it. So go check that out.
You know what, Sean? I'll say that too. We did do a fantastic job. Great book club.
Yeah. We can pat ourselves on the back every now and then. We don't have to say that our content sucks. We get to say that it's good. But we can be honest with ourselves. And so I'm honestly saying here and now that I want to see somebody else do next week's opening bit.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Is that commentary on Phil's performance, or just that you? Okay.
I have 227 episodes. Sean's just tired of it.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I was tired of it after the first episode. But you know,
it's a diversity play. We should bring somebody of color up there. And you know what, Sean, I feel like I'm primed for that position.
You're ready to step up to the plate, Marco.
I'm ready to step up to the plate.
Hello? Oh, yes, agent. Oh, I'm glad to hear from you. Yeah. Oh, you have a new project for me. Great. Oh, terrific.
God.
Here comes another tremendous bit.
The Comics Friends? Yeah, I'll be part of that. Sick. I'm sorry, were you no-selling me again?
Oh, do you have
yes.
do you have another show to get to? We'll see you never. Bye.
Oh, I have a half hour.
Okay.
Great. We will discuss your severance package on the 33rd. So
okay,
be waiting for my call.
The 33rd, eh?
Yes. So without further ado, I actually want to dive into some of the listener comments that we got over the last week. You guys really killed it in terms of reaching out and letting us know your thoughts on what we're doing. So, Pete, go ahead and take it away.
Sure. So this first comment comes from Chaos in Comics, which was over on our Mike Perkins interview, which you can go check out. We talked to him about the Swamp Thing and a bunch of other stuff, his career. So great interview. Check that out. And Chaos in Comics wrote in and said, great person to interview. Watching now. Nice channel you guys have put together here. Thank you so much, Chaos in Comics.
Appreciate that.
This next one comes from Tone Riggs over on our WandaVision Episode 8 review and said, this show has lived up to the hype. Can't wait for the finale. Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki have some big shoes to fill. I think that's fair to say.
Winter Falcon. Woo!
Wow.
Surprised for Marco to be on the hype train for that one.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm all about the ships.
No, he's in. He's in.
The ships, eh?
He's here
Yeah,
for the
that's true. He does.
it's
He
not.
does love romance. He does love a good romance comic. All right, so this next one comes from Trevor Hazelwood over on our Hicksville book club. Excuse me. And Trevor said, "Thank you all. I have a class discussing this book and wasn't able to order it in time. Surprisingly, there's virtually no way to read it digitally. That is not surprising because we bought the last 5 copies on Amazon, so I'm not surprised. Literally, like no joke."
Glad we could help with your homework, bud.
Yeah, what do you think his plan was here? Was he gonna teach a class on our episode? Like,
no, I'm thinking that he probably is in a class.
He didn't Spark Notes it.
No, but he could probably just steal our opinions and act like he read the book.
Good for him.
Yeah,
good for him. You go.
Yeah, I'm glad we could help you, Trevor. Sincerely. Hope you gave us a subscribe for it.
Kale's mad because he had to read the book. This guy just had to watch a YouTube video.
I like the book.
We all know how much Kale hates reading. It's fine.
I read books with pictures.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, thank you guys all for the comments. I'm glad that the Hicksville Book Club ended up being useful to someone.
At least it touched somebody.
Yo, I hope Trevor, if you're listening by any chance, if we got you with that, tell us what you got on the assignment. Did you get an egg?
God, if he got like an F or something, is that an indictment of us?
I would say so.
I'd come at the
Yeah.
teacher. I'd be like, that's some well thought out criticism.
So let's get into the Pals Pulls for the week. We're going to start with Marco, who chose a book that has a title that I'm very intrigued by, Maniac of New York. I think that's actually referring to Marco himself.
It's
Is this
an
an
autobiographical.
This is more so a fictionalized biography.
Oh, so it's like Berserker.
Basically. I'm surprised you didn't pick this up, Sean. This one I thought would get you because it actually has Andrea Moody, who did Fearscape, the artist for that.
I didn't know the book existed.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. So this is basically just about a murderer who goes on a rampage one New Year's, and the entirety of New York City is like frozen in fear of this person. It's a detective story where different task force are created to stop this crazy person, and it feels like an 80s movie. And I feel like I was talking to it with either Sultan of Swing on the Discord or Justin, and we both had really good reactions, really dug the vibe, the art, and the story is interesting in that the detectives, have a past and you explore it and all that, the typical dark detective trope.
Yeah.
But it's generally like a fun time.
That's just a framing device that works when it's done well, though, right? Like the idea of like detectives chasing down a killer is like it's a great setup if you have good characters and like a good mystery to tell,
Yeah, and I enjoy it because this issue, the first issue is like he's just kind of out and about, and then this issue in particular, he happens to step on a train and he's going from one of the longest stops, either crossing one of the rivers where you have to go underground. There's like no stop in between, and you're underground for at least 7 to 10 minutes, and it's like what happens then.
Well, okay, cool. So it's like establishing good tension, it seems, and everything.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
cool, man.
All right, well, guess I'm gonna have to pick that book up, at least the first issue, see if I can snag it if it's available anywhere. Of course, Marco is a digital reader, so that doesn't impact him.
Yep, I wake up and it downloads.
Wow,
Is that how you do it? Do you like pick them out in advance so that when you're up on Wednesday, they're all like ready to go?
Yeah, I pre-order them the week before. Typically, I'm like a week ahead on it, and I'll just go through it, pre-order, and then Wednesdays I'll do it again because sometimes they'll update it and they'll have like additional stuff. Yeah, and just wake up, download, and read.
So Marco, let me ask you this question: when you buy your books digitally, right? When you buy your books digitally, do you pick out a variant cover ever?
No, I don't look at the cover. I just look at the content.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you? I feel like the digital versions sometimes come with the variant cover included, so you can see it, right?
Like on the back sometimes.
Oh,
It depends.
that must be really cool to like look at on a screen.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's so much different from looking at it in your hand.
Being able to feel it, maybe put it up on your wall, things like that. It's pretty
Dude,
cool. I have some actually some pretty valuable variant covers. I don't know, it's just cool to have tactile experience,
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't like touching them, though, is the thing. I like having it, but I can't read them. My hands are too sweaty, and it just makes me anxious the whole time.
Thumbprints.
Yeah, whenever I hold a physical comic, I'm just like, oh, I'm fucking ruining this.
Pete,
I'm destroying this.
Pete, I'm trying to establish tension between me and Marco. Why are you making this about you?
It's again a window into his personal life.
You're right.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's move on. Eternals #3, also by Marco. Or
Let's
rather,
go.
Chosen by Marco, not by Marco.
Oh,
One day.
One day. Yeah, I dug Eternals #2. You can go check out a review, and it was I don't know. I'm enjoying the story. I like the sort of the direction. I definitely love the art, and I'm just interested to see sort of where they keep going with the murder mystery and the relationship between all of the the Eternals. We had mixed reactions, but I'm definitely somebody who's up on it.
Okay, very good. And then I chose Children of the Atom #1. So this is a long gestating, often delayed book from Marvel. Vita Ayala has been working on this for quite some time. I can't remember exactly when it was announced, but it's been a while. This is Vita Ayala and Bernard Chang. So very talented creative team. And this book is, at least as it was solicited originally, is supposed to be about young mutants who have power sets that are extremely similar to the mutants that we all know and love. But it's not quite them, and it's, from what I recall, it's not like an alternate future thing or anything like that. So we don't know exactly what the mystery of it is, and that's probably why I'm so intrigued. But it's gonna be a fun ride. So issue #1 is gonna drop next week, and I will absolutely be there, at least for that. We'll see if the premise is good beyond the mystery part of it. I will definitely be around for the run.
Sounds cool. So apparently it was announced back in January of last year, and it was supposed to originally come in April.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Was this the one that we talked about where she was like wasn't sure about the premise, or was that
that was
X-Corp?
X-Corp? Okay, never mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's Teenie Howard, right? Is doing that one?
That was Teenie Howard.
Yeah.
Oh, that was okay. All right.
Mm-hmm. Marco just all over the place. You know,
fake fan.
I find that when I read books physically, that I tend to retain more information about like what happened in them and who the creators are and things like that. It helps me keep a relationship with comics that's a little deeper, I feel.
I guess if you're a Marvel fan.
Yeah. Marco, notorious for not reading X-Men comics, right?
only Onslaught.
That's right.
Right, the best book.
That was the last good X-Men book, obviously.
the best last event.
The last best event.
Marco won't read events
No,
anymore.
the best last event. Everything else after this is not an event. It's not canon.
You sound like a comic fan who's like in his 40s or something, or it's like comics aren't as good as they used to be.
It's
they're
not my
not,
fault that
bro.
they're not.
They peaked at Onslaught.
Hilarious. And then Pete, Phil, and I all chose Wonder Woman Earth 1 Volume 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's finally concluding. Grant Morrison and Yannick Paquette. The first 2 volumes are excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the last time a Earth 1 book even dropped, actually, but it's a line of up and down quality books. I think this is the peak of the crop, personally.
This is the only one I really pay attention to.
And it's great. We've talked to Yannick Paquette before, and he's talked in depth about his creative process behind that. You can find that on our YouTube channel. But I'm really excited for this.
I think specifically the one when you talked to him in 2018, I think we talked about this book and focus on it quite a bit. So go check that out if you want to hear more about his process. But yeah, we were talking about it a little bit off mic. Like this is a book that like, I like the story of it, but I'd show up for Yannick's art on this one alone. I love the way he draws Wonder Woman. The creative stuff he does with like the paneling and everything. Like it's a treat. And it's a book that I've recommended to friends who are regular comics readers that like don't like superhero stuff. And they've even gotten a lot out of it just because it's really, really high quality, I think. It's a book I'd recommend to anybody.
Yeah. Wonder Woman Earth 1 has been really cool. There was actually some controversy recently. This is the only spot we've had in the show to talk about this, so I'll use it. A couple weeks back, people took Grant to task for the depiction of Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor's relationship in Earth 1. So in the Earth 1 series, Steve Trevor's black. Mm-hmm. And Grant was trying, I assume, to bridge together the original sort of Wonder Woman origin and backstory of the person who created her. What was the name of that person?
I'll look it up. I forget his name.
So that person is notorious for having an interest in BDSM and alternative.
William Randolph Marston, I think his name is.
Moulton.
Okay.
William
Moulton.
Moulton Marston.
There you go. And so Grant, I imagine, was trying to pay homage to that and include that by having Wonder Woman's relationship with Steve be established by her binding him.
Yeah.
It was like supposed to be this I don't know, like kind of like a ritual, get together type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so people have taken that, and because of the imagery of a black man being presented with chains by a white woman, people took that to mean that Grant is racist. And I was shocked by that, because when I read that story, I didn't even I didn't even think anything of it. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't until I saw this commentary that I even realized what was being like, that could be interpreted that way.
Sure.
If I'm not mistaken, it's been some time now since I've read the first volume of Wonder Woman Earth 1. Doesn't he reject the chains and shackles too?
I don't remember.
It's been a while. Yeah, I feel like he has a reaction to it, and she's kind of like, "Oh, that's just what we do." Like, go ahead, Marco.
In one of the interviews that Phil does, they actually talk about, Yannick actually talks about that angle of it, the BDCM, from an art perspective, that gives that additional context that Sean was talking about too. Just from like why they decided to design certain things that way and why they decided to actually visually portray it that way. So I don't remember the specifics, but if you guys want to go back, it's probably a good interview just to get that additional insight.
Yeah, that feels like one of those things that's like, I guess I could understand why someone would look at that image and be like, whoa, but like, I feel like within the context of the story and everything, like I remember feeling, now that you point that out, I remember having like a similar reaction to that, Sean, of just like not even really thinking anything about it. Cause like, I just don't like, I feel like it's like you said, it's trying to connect to the roots of Wonder Woman, and like there are other depictions of bondage in the story and stuff like that. And I think it's like maybe just kind of like unfortunate how that could be interpreted versus like an intent on the part of Grant or something like that.
I feel a little remiss because I haven't read it in a while. But
It's been a while, yeah.
My memory of it is like, I feel like they made Steve Trevor black deliberately because of like subjugation stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that one in itself was like meant to be kind of a commentary.
It does feel kind of weird to like accuse him of being racist while intentionally making one of his main characters black, right? Like,
well, the idea would be like they made him intentionally black, racistly or something.
Yeah, right. But like, I don't feel like that's the depiction of the character in that story.
That's my memory of it too.
But it has been a while, so.
The thing that kills me, I'm not like gonna go on, this is gonna dominate the show, but like what kills me is people look at that, right? And they look at the character Steve Trevor and they just see black, right? They just see black man, bondage, racist. It's like a crazy reaction that has its roots in automatically seeing the race of a person and crafting a narrative around, imagery or a moment or whatever that goes beyond the scope of what is happening in that moment. Like, if a black person in any environment, is interested in BDSM, does that have something to do with the roots of African Americans dealing with slavery? No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that. And I think that sometimes, you kind of just have to chill and let a story be a story. Like Steve Trevor being black is good and great and acceptable by itself. And, introducing the idea of bondage or whatever is also perfectly fine and acceptable. It's if something happens in the book that goes beyond that, that's clear, that is charged, that has intention. That's a different story. But we gotta chill, man. We gotta chill.
That your comment on like like a black person and wanting to, let's say, that be a bondage thing. There's a play called Slave Play by Jeremy O'Harris that it premiered here in on Broadway, and it tackled that very same concept about BDSM and an interracial couple, and they're actually it being a kink on it's like slave play. So like anecdotal, ancillary, but just something that it gets explored in art that I think, to your point, Sean, it goes beyond just it being the like what you make of it, but the context of a story.
Yeah,
Look at
exactly.
Marco bringing theater talk into this.
Yeah, bro.
It's a fucking cultured ass show, Phil.
Anyway, let's move on because we've got a lot of other things to dive into here. Leave Grant alone, by the way.
Yeah, dude. Like back off. Grant's cool.
So yeah. So San Diego Comic-Con is, of course, the premier comic book convention. Frankly, just a multimedia event, just across the board. I feel like if you've got some new hot thing that you want to put out and promote, doing it at San Diego Comic-Con is generally a great idea. We did not get a proper San Diego Con last year due to COVID, and one of the big questions that's been asked, one of the questions we asked on this show actually, is when will comic book conventions return? And now we know that at least for this half of the year, there will be no San Diego Comic-Con in person. So this week, San Diego Comic-Con's owners, the hosters, Comic-Con International, put out a statement that essentially said that due to the ongoing coronavirus crisis, there will be no in-person event this year. In addition to that, not only will there not be an in-person event, but we will be getting Comic-Con at home, but it will only be 3 days.
How long was the first one? Wasn't it like a week?
Yeah, I believe it was a week.
A whole week? Oh, I thought it was the typical like 4-day thing.
I don't quite remember. It was long, it felt like, but.
So I'm going to read a little bit of this statement. While we are buoyed by the rollout of the vaccine and the growing number of individuals being inoculated, it appears that July will still be too early to safely hold an in-person event of the magnitude of Comic-Con. For this reason, we have made the challenging decision to postpone Comic-Con 2021 as an in-person gathering until our 2022 dates, and once again hold this year's celebration as the free online Comic-Con at home. Unfortunately, the challenges of this past year and the multiple postponements of our two largest events have left us with limited financial resources. So this year, the online experience will be reduced to a 3-day event spanning July 23rd through the 25th, 2021. That sucks.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Listen, conventions are just begging for disease to spread. We know that just from going to the conventions every year that, we all leave with what we call con crud. Yeah, you don't want to leave with coronavirus. And as it is right now, according to the CDC, only about 17% of the country has been vaccinated. And, by the time San Diego Comic-Con rolls around, how many people will that be really?
Yeah.
California is a densely populated state. You just don't want an easy bake oven of COVID cases.
Plus, you do also run the risk, right, of like how many people come to Comic-Con from out of state, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like, even if California has a higher percentage, right, or is in a better position than some of the other states in the union, you're still running a real risk of somebody from Texas or wherever, right, like coming in and potentially infecting people. I think it's clear that this is the right move, but it is a bummer, and it is something that I think, for me as a fan, I am a little nervous. Like I hope that the nerves that I have about it are misplaced in the way that I think some of our concerns about like what was going to happen to comic shops was, right? Where like, yes, like there will be some casualties. You will see some conventions go away and not come back, but the vast majority of them, the ones that people really care about, should endure, is my hope. But you read this statement, right? And they're saying, right, like with the postponement of the 2 events that make them money last year, like they're in a pretty dire financial strait, I would imagine. And that's only going to get worse this year that they've had to put on San Diego, New York, and now this event at home with probably very little financial return, especially compared to
New York.
Oh, right. That's Reed Pop.
Reed Pop. Their 2 big events are obviously SDCC and WonderCon.
Okay. Because PAX is also Reed Pop as well, right?
I think.
Yeah, I always get it mixed up. But either way, right, the postponement of both of those events that's huge. That's a huge loss. That's where they make most of their money in the year, San Diego, and then that operates through the rest of the year while they schedule the next event. Having to miss that twice is, obviously going to be a major hit to them as an organization. And like, I worry about, like, is that something that maybe impacts the 2022 event, or are they going to have to like, seek a round of investment capital? Are they going to have to sell off portions of the company? Like, those are all legitimate concerns, right? If the ship doesn't right and they're not able to start throwing events again.
Let me ask you guys a question then, with that in mind, Pete. So many states in the country are doing limited capacity seating for sporting events now.
Yeah.
President Biden believes that by May, most adults in the country will have at least received their first vaccination. I think that's ambitious, but that's what the administration is saying. Do you think it would be worthwhile if San Diego Comic-Con did some kind of limited capacity convention? Like, would have that been a worthwhile endeavor?
It's tough to say, because how limited does it have to be safe?
Mm-hmm.
And is that enough to justify the cost of throwing the event, right? Because like the cost of renting the facility is still going to probably be the same amount of money, right? Like the cost that you're spending on celebrities, all those kinds of things, those are still investment costs you have to make. And if you're not maximizing the number of people coming in, the number of vendors that you can charge a booth fee to, all that stuff, I don't know. Like I don't know that it would be worth it.
Well, let me pause the conversation here, because they simultaneously made an announcement that there will be, in fact, a smaller event this year.
Okay, there you go.
So the statement said, while we lament the postponement of the in-person Comic-Con, our commitment to this community of fans and our celebration of comics and the related popular arts endures as an important part of who we are. As the timing and scope of our larger events factor greatly into our decision to postpone, we believe that launching a smaller in-person event at a later time may be a safe alternative.
Cool.
For this reason, we are happy to announce that San Diego Comic Convention is planning to present a 3-day in-person convention in San Diego in November. At this time, we are still working on specific details as to attendance capacity, badge cost, and related information, and those details will be forthcoming.
I think that's a better, less risky play, considering your question on sports, Phil, because by that point, assuming things go out, as close to plan as possible, you're going to get a higher percentage of inoculation by November. I know that for myself and Marina, like we're in a category where, because we work from home, we're going to be like the last on the list to get vaccinated. So, there's obviously like steps to get people who I'm assuming would be creators also who work from home, who don't fall into some of these categories anyway, who would also have to wait for some of that vaccination. So that gives people more time. It gives the whole process more time, which I think is also smarter, because you can kind of gauge your activity and how things shake out in the first half of the year, and then be able to be a little more flexible towards the back half. Whether or not things progress in the most ideal way, that's to be seen. But I think it's definitely at the very least being more risk averse.
I think that's an important point to note too, right? Like, what was the you just said the timeline, Phil. What was the estimated by which point everybody will have gotten their first dose?
I mean,
it's
President
up to
Biden thinks May.
Right. So let's say pessimistically it's
I know, Sean.
right? Yeah. It's probably not May. So let's say pessimistically, most people in the country who want to get a shot can get their first dose by June, right?
Yeah.
The idea that by like November that you'll have a significant number of people that are that have gotten that second dose and are, you know, at least relatively safe, right? It's not 100% effective. We all know how vaccines work. But that doesn't seem as crazy as like a July or an August. But we also, I want to say, we said that last year.
Sure.
And granted, we also said, well, like, let's be careful, right? Because summer, there's going to be a dip, and then it's going to rise again in the winter, and, you know,
That's exactly what happened.
And that's exactly what happened, right? So I think there's also a real risk of us being optimistic right now because things look good, and then we get to November, and for whatever number of reasons that are factors at play, that it's not as safe as we think it could be. But there's also plenty of cities where we're seeing, like, greater availability than was predicted, earlier timeline. So it's like, it's kind of hard to say because the next 3 months are, I think, going to be a huge deciding factor in what the end of this year looks like in terms of a quote unquote return to normalcy, you know? But I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that we're going to like be at a con by the end of this year. I really do. I want it, but I don't know.
Yo, if we get a con, who's going?
No.
Depends on the circumstances, dude.
If I'm vaccinated, yeah, I'll go.
If we're all vaccinated and it's a reduced capacity, all that stuff, like maybe, I guess, yeah. I don't know though.
The UK is their steps are in place now, and they're thinking everything is going to be done by June. They're saying everyone is going to be ready to have their second dose or done,
right?
And everything is going to open same as it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely possible.
I'm not doing anything until like 2023.
You know, California, you know, giant state, had a ton of COVID cases. Their case counts are really low right now. And that's ditto from a lot of the country. And a lot of that can be attributed to the vaccine rollout. I think it really is possible by May or June, like, you know, COVID cases could be really like very, very low to the point that we could have an actual summer again.
Well, summer for Comic-Cons is probably not going to be realistic.
Yeah.
But I do have hope for a November event through San Diego. I do not believe, I still maintain my prediction that New York Comic-Con will not physically take place because I think that the planning for an event of that magnitude would already have had to begun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there are so many factors that they just can't be sure about. And it's such a huge event that I just can't see it.
Do you think maybe like a Keystone could come back though? Like something that is like more middle sized?
I really
yeah.
Maybe.
I think it's entirely possible. I think that like if we were saying if Keystone were a Florida event, I would say yes.
Oh yeah.
And I say it's because of the kinds of people who are in that area. So in the East Coast, I feel that people might be less inclined to do something like that. In Philly, where people are so conscious and whatever, they might not want to take that risk. In Florida, Texas, certain other states, you can get back to some of that normalcy.
Like, so, I'm wondering if like South by Southwest might happen like late this year or something like that. You know, like that's a huge thing in Texas. Like, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see because like it's so hard. Like that new vaccine, I can't remember the name. The one that like just is getting
Johnson & Johnson one?
Yeah. Like that, we didn't know about that 6 weeks ago, right? Like,
sure.
There are X factors at play here that are also like impossible to predict. So,
and one other thing, Sean, to your point about New York Comic Con, it's hard to picture New York Comic Con rolling out with a in-person San Diego Comic Con a month later. Like they're like stepping on each other's toes in that scenario.
Yeah, but they're on opposite ends of the country.
But like news wise,
yeah. But I think like,
people just want to be, you know, have that experience.
Yeah. Okay.
I think people would be so fucking hungry, and not even just like fans, but like brands. are like so hungry to be able to be at a place and sell people shit again and be like,
Sure.
our movie's coming out and you can go see it in a theater. Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be so much hunger for that kind of interaction, I think.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for the Comics Pals Expo.
Okay.
We're throwing our own now.
DCPE.
It's in Florida. Don't worry about it.
You want him to do the opening bid next week?
Not really.
Honestly, you don't really have a lot of great options on the show for the opening bit,
Can we get like a Matt Murphy? Can we get
Oh,
we
we're
just
going to
plug
start
it in?
outsourcing the opening bit. I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
yeah.
Sean's
That-
sitting here talking so big, like he's never done one.
He's the host.
I have responsibilities, Kale.
Still.
That go beyond having to think of a bit 1 minute before we roll.
Point is, you've still never done one.
Why would I?
You're sitting here criticizing all ours. Where's yours?
Hmm.
Sure,
So-
the show comes together every week, but not the opening bit.
Spoken
You
like a
haven't done
true
the opening
writer,
bit.
right? Spoken like a true
no.
writer whenever he gets a little bit of criticism like, oh, why don't you critics try writing a book? And then you'll know the true struggle of the artiste.
You
That was
fucking will.
such a millennial response too, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh well, you're gonna criticize me. Well, why don't you do it yourself if it's so easy? Go ahead, go right ahead.
I like
So
that.
number
voice.
one, Kale, I didn't criticize you. I criticized Phil. But number two, I could do the opening bit just like I do everything else around here. But there are 5 of us, so why don't you pick up a little bit of slack, buddy?
I've done my share of opening bits. They
Wanna-
haven't landed.
Okay, so
Listen, I'm not saying mine are good. That's not what I'm saying.
I never
That's
said
not
I
the
was
point I'm
funny.
arguing.
We can all agree mine are good though.
Well, which of those are memorable? I feel like Kale's flush down the jam is probably the one that gets referenced the
The
most.
most iconic opening
That's
bit,
true.
of course.
I legitimately have fans. So
The flush down the jam opening bit is the only one that I've ever heard that made me contemplate ending my life. So memorable, yes. Quality, I don't know.
See, I feel like
Again,
Kale
no.
is with that example, right? He's like tapping into like the modern mentality behind like commercials, right? Where it's like, well, it doesn't have to be good or funny. It just has to be an earworm, right? It has to live in rent free in the back of your skull for the rest of your fucking life.
Definitely.
I'll be on my fucking deathbed, flush down the jam.
the fucking theme song I made is just playing in my head again now. I thought it was out of my life.
All right. Well, speaking of things that, well, may or may not be good, Infinite Frontier came out this week.
I thought you were gonna say things that may or may not be out of my life, like you're breaking up with DC.
Talk about flushing down the jam.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. break up
Bum,
with
bum,
DC.
bum, bum.
So Infinite Frontier came out this week,
Sure did.
and a lot of people are very happy with it. A lot of people feel that it was quality. If you want to hear our review of that, and not only that, but we've got a few reviews. We've got Berserker #1, and then we've also got The Swamp Thing #1. So you can listen to all 3 of those. That review is out now. You can go check that out. But Infinite Frontier definitely landed for quite a few people. The 64-page comic book featured stories about several different characters from all corners of the DC universe. And we now know that that story will be continuing in an Infinite Frontier series. So this was #0. #1 will be dropping in June. Not only did we learn that, but we also learned who the creative team will be. So Joshua Williamson and Zermanico, who you will know from Justice League Dark and many other things, will be teaming up to tell the story of the Infinite Frontier. So DC's description is in Infinite Frontier #0, when our heroes saved the DC multiverse from Perpetua and Dark Knight's death metal, everything was put back where it belonged. And we do mean everything. All the damage from all the crises was undone, and heroes long thought gone, returned from whatever exile they've been in. Most of them, at least, their story isn't over. Infinite Frontier #0 was just the beginning. In this summer event, Alan Scott, the Green Lantern from the Justice Society of America, has noticed some of his allies are still missing in action, and he is determined to find them. There are others, though, that would rather remain hidden than explain themselves, like Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, a man who should be dead, now is not. Plus, what does all this mean for the DCU's place in the multiverse? On opposite sides of a dimensional divide, both Barry Allen and President Superman ponder this question, not to mention the dark side of it all, or a team of multiversal heroes called the Justice Incarnate. So I just said a mouthful. What do you guys think about the idea of the Infinite Frontier, branding or whatever, continuing on to be an event of its own? And did any of the threads that I just laid down make you want to read something like that?
The answer is no.
Okay.
I don't know. It just feels a little contrived,
Yeah. And again, for the full thoughts on Infinite Frontier Zero, go check out our review. But I think for me, this gets into something that I remember we were making fun of DC for a couple of weeks ago, where they, for whatever reason, feel like they really, really need to make every editorial decision be a thing that makes sense, in universe. And you get these scenes of characters just explaining things that are changing, and it's just I don't know, dude. This whole thing feels very manufactured, and the idea of them wanting to set that stage and explain it and just be so this happened, and this is why reality works this way now in the DC universe. Fine, that is a thing that probably warrants explaining. There are definitely certain kinds of readers that really do care about the mechanics of things like that. Give me the explanation. The idea of an ongoing book that's going to explore that as a concept is could not be less interesting to me.
I don't know, and we'll talk about more in coming out of the review, but I think depending on how it gets out, how they're able to frame the story coming out of that book, I at least thought that it might be interesting to just see and follow along for a little bit if there is that interest, just because I'm curious to see how they're going to do it, more so from a structural perspective and less so from a narrative perspective, which give or take are as to whether or not one should matter. But I mean, I'm thinking about following it just to see how they do that. And then of what Sean listed out, the Alan Scott story interested me. I just since reading John's JSA, some of those characters have become a soft spot for me. So I'll probably pick that up just because I'm curious to see what they do with him.
Cool.
So I didn't necessarily interpret this description as following the part of the story that is, here's how everything works.
You don't think so?
Not, at least not me. I interpret it as, here are the threads that were left dangling in Infinite Frontier that are not continuing in any other book, so we'll do them here.
Okay, sure.
Okay, all right. That sounds better. Still probably not into it, though. I barely remember what was even in this book.
I'm a sucker for this kind of thing. I always wished that there was a Marvel comic called, just a random example, the Heroic Age. When Marvel had the Heroic Age as a banner, and that was the big thing going on. I wish that there was a book that kind of told you the story of the Heroic Age in one thing that featured some of the characters who didn't get a spotlight anywhere else, but were still in the midst of whatever the big overlapping story is.
Sure.
And so if this is going to be that, then I think that's pretty cool, because I am intrigued by what they laid down with Alan Scott. And I really don't have a relationship with Roy Harper, but I know a little bit about that through Cry for Justice and awfulness like that. and I kind of have some interest. So this is DC telling me you need to read this book because this is where you will learn the machinations that are going to lead to the bigger stories coming from us.
Sure.
And so if that's what this is, then I'm all in, and I'm thankful to DC for doing it. If it's not that, which I'll know probably within the first issue, then I think I might have to start writing up the paperwork for the divorce.
Okay.
They have a letters page for that.
I would never
Really?
write anything. I would never write negative feedback to anything like that.
Have you ever been part of a letters page before, Sean?
No. No, I've never written it. I wish I had when I was younger.
Do you know which books you would have done it for? Now you got me curious. I know we're off topic.
I would have done it certainly for Grant Morrison's Batman, although I
Sure.
don't recall that having a letters page. But I would have written in. I would have written in for New Avengers by Bendis. Jeez, man, I would have spent my life writing in if I was inclined to be that type of person. But yeah, so that's the skinny on the Infinite Frontier summer event. I'm a little surprised, actually, because I thought that they would have something a little bit bigger than this planned.
It sounds like a 52 or a countdown
Yeah.
style book to me. Yeah, at least the way you were just describing it.
You know what? Those were both kind of big deals at their during their time they were published.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they were how the threads were woven for Infinite Crisis and Final Crisis.
Plus, I mean, I don't know. I think there is something to the idea of like, and I don't know, we've kind of talked about this, right? Like DC is kind of trying to readjust the way they deliver stories in certain ways, right? Like between the experiment with doing like the limited run digital stories that are like week to week and like doing the backup stories. Not that that's new, but like pushing that in a lot of their major titles. That is kind of like a throwback to like the way comics used to be sold and produced, right? And like the idea of this being like kind of an anthology book of like everything else going on in the margins of the DC universe. Like that could be cool. There was a book like that for Invincible called Invincible Universe that I liked for that reason, where it's like there's all these like other characters that are interesting and like have their own shit going on, but like don't necessarily show up in a Batman or a Superman book or whatever, right? So like, and maybe you can't carry a title with every one of those characters, but like there's still good stories to be told, and you know they're gonna play into other events that could maybe put them over and warrant them getting their own book and all that kind of stuff. So you can see the value in it if it's well executed.
Yeah, and the way that Kale mentioned 52 and things like that, that certainly was important at that time. So if this has that flavor, then yeah, absolutely.
You got something.
Exactly. Speaking of the Infinite Frontier, though, one of the books that is spinning out of Infinite Frontier #0 is Tom King's Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, if you can believe that. So Tom, who has been working, of course, on Batwoman, Catwoman, and Rorschach, and Strange Adventures, and all these different things, is now turning his eye to Supergirl. He's going to be teaming up with Bilquis Evely, who most recently did the Sandman Universe, the Dreaming book, for an 8-issue miniseries that's going to start in June. DC's description reads, Kara Zor-El has seen some epic adventures over the years, but has recently found her life without meaning or purpose. Here she is, a young woman who saw her planet destroyed and was sent to Earth to protect a baby cousin who ended up not needing her. What was it all for? Wherever she goes, people only see her through the lens of Superman's fame. Okay. They also say an alien girl seeks her out for a vicious mission. Her world has been destroyed and the bad guys responsible are still out there. She wants revenge, and if Supergirl doesn't help her, she'll do it herself, whatever the cost. Now, a Kryptonian, a dog, and an angry, heartbroken child head out into space on a journey that will shake them to their very core.
Huh.
Love to see Crypto. Love to see Crypto getting the bump.
I feel like the Tom King's I've heard good things about when Tom King writes Superman. He has the book up in the sky, which I've seen even in a Discord, people have really like praised it for being some consistent work from him. And with Bilquis, man, her stuff is just like awesome. So from an artistic perspective, he always gets top tier artists, and this is just like another one to sort of add to that list. And I mean, I'm interested. I'm always interested to give Tom King a shot, and especially considering the art too. And if it's a Superman story, I've not read one, and I've heard good things. So yeah, this is definitely like a get for my book, and has interested me enough based off of what you laid out, Sean.
Yeah, I agree, because I think for me, this kind of flies in the face of the thing that like I think Phil is usually the first one to like point out, right? Is that like Tom King definitely goes back to the same wells a lot. And this book doesn't seem like that, right? Like I remember like when they announced like Tom King Rorschach, I was like, I don't know about that. Like I don't know that I want that. I can guess what that book feels like, you know, whether it's good or not. And I remember feeling like another mystery. He's been doing mysteries. The last 3 books are mysteries. Like, okay, this isn't that, right? Like this seems different. It seems like a different kind of story. I've never read a story where he wrote a woman. You know, those are things that are like, and like Supergirl's a different kind of character than I feel like I've read from him, right? Like than a Rorschach or a, you know, whatever, right? The idea of him telling a story that is about like hope and, you know, and like those kinds of things, and like maybe this supporting character who he's establishing is a little bit more connected to that kind of like war and revenge and those things that he knows so well. But the idea of like maybe telling a story about overcoming those things and trying to be a beacon of light for other people and all that, like that's something that like feels like new territory for him, and could potentially be something that's like rewarding and like shows a different side to him, you know, and evolves what he still growing on what he's written about, but finding a new way to talk about it, you know, and from an angle of a guy who's like kind of removed from that now too, right? Like he's probably a different person than he was a few years ago, right? So I don't know. There seems to be meat on the bone for me on this one.
I really disliked Superman Up in the Sky. I thought it was terrible. That featured that issue where Lois Lane gets graphically murdered over and over in 12 pages because it's like Superman's anxieties in life or whatever. Yeah, I mean, Tom King Superman is not something I'm terribly interested in. However, what I will say about Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is the cover for the first issue is awesome.
It's so good.
So
it's got very Flash Gordon vibes, which intrigues me.
So
Wouldn't you say Strange Adventures kind of had that too? Am I crossing streams?
Yes, but because Adam Strange is that type of character, this feels like that style of pulpy adventure, like sci-fi adventure, as opposed to Tom King's normal sort of noir, war-tortured,
like grit,
veteran grit. You know, where with Strange Adventures having the sci-fi trappings along with that, at least this cover, you know, makes it look like a real hard retro sci-fi.
Yeah,
I feel like Strange Adventures is a deconstruction of that. You know, like it's like, here is the thing, and here's like a twisted mirror image of it, right? And like, cool, this feels more authentic to that style. Like, let's do it in a way that's not gonna be a weird funhouse mirror thing. That's not gonna be like, let's take this and make it gritty and heavy, and, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the idea of him doing something different from that is pretty exciting, I think.
Do we know that that's what this is?
No.
Yeah, at least it doesn't seem like that on its face.
Right. And you're totally right to say that, Sean. It could
I can
very
only,
well
I can only say that off this cover. This cover makes me think of that.
Well, and I think even like the cover, but also just like the solicitation, like feels lighter. Like it's up to Supergirl, a dog, and a sad kid to go save the world. Like it's like, all right, that like I don't know. It's giving me that vibe.
Well, at the very least, it wouldn't be a Tom King book without it being absolutely beautiful to look at.
Fair enough. Just a shout out to Matt Lopez. He typically does colors on anything that Evely does, so he doesn't get enough respect. So just a big shout out to him because I think he's a big part of giving it that retro vibe.
So DC and Tom actually got a fair bit of criticism. When I say fair, I don't mean that the criticism was fair. I mean that it was, significant.
Sizable.
That people were upset that Supergirl is getting this book and that a man is writing it. Why not have a woman write the book? If DC doesn't really have a huge stable of women writers, and that a lot of the books that DC is publishing right now do not prominently feature women. So that was the critique this week.
To me, those are two separate issues, though, right? Like, you can, like, them not having enough stories that are fronted by female characters is, like, in my mind, a separate issue from not having more female writers. And we talked about this through the lens of like Miles Morales and Brian Michael Bendis, and I don't think that's like, you can acknowledge both of those things in the same breath and be like, hey, like this points to a problem, right? But I think saying that it's inherently problematic that Tom King, a very well-known writer who has clout at DC and can write whatever book he wants to write, being the one who's like, well, I have a Supergirl story to tell, and now we're getting a story about Supergirl, right? Like, that checks one of those boxes, that we want more stories that feature female characters as the leads, right? So take that as the win that it is, and then also criticize DC for not hiring more female writers. That's my take.
But then why also to like why disparage the artist, right? Because she's the one drawing it.
Right,
So,
50% of the creative team.
And it's like, are you also discounting all the solo work that Joelle Jones is doing, let's say, right? So like, I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you, Pete.
Not to mention, it does tie into the thing that Sean made the point about in our Black Superman episode, where it's like, what, can women only write women characters and men can only write men? And like, is the book good? Is it authentic? Is it true? Does it speak to something true in the human experience? Like, that's what I'm more interested in, and also hire more women.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to, right? You should have a labor staff that is, more diverse of people that are people of color and different genders, not a bunch of white guys that are middle-aged or whatever. This kind of thing doesn't feel to me like a giant issue, having Tom King write a character that's a woman. Let the merit of the book stand on its own. If he does something problematic with, Supergirl, then you can hound him on that or whatever. But
yeah.
The actual news of him doing this, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I think it's really unfortunate because like I've never ever cared about Supergirl. I don't feel that in the 15 years that I've been reading comics that DC has ever done anything with the character that caught my attention. That's not to say that in that time period there may not have been runs that were good, but on their face, they didn't put a creative team together that I was intrigued by, or the premise wasn't compelling.
Sure.
But here I am, and I see this, and I'm like, oh shoot, I want to check this out. So the hope is that they do such a bang up job that the next Supergirl run, who has, a woman creator on it, or whoever, quite frankly, now that I've been initiated into the character, now I want to follow their journey.
Yeah. I don't know,
and
dude.
I think that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think that the point that Marco made about half the creative team, I shouldn't say half the creative team, but of the most important people on the book, the writer artist, half of that is, a woman. And that in comics, we value more highly the writer than the artist, even in the ways that we talk about these types of things. And I think it's funny that people who probably would also simultaneously say respect artists and make sure that every person a part of the creative process is highlighted and artist names should go above writers, blah, 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 don't respect the fact that she's the person getting to artistically drive the narrative. Tom is writing it, but she's drawing it. And we can see from Strange Adventures that book is nothing without the artists at all.
I
That's
believe
also Tom's whole thing. He collaborates very closely with his artists,
I believe critics, though, Sean, would say that both the artist and the writer should be a woman. That would be their counterpoint, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know, dude. Like, ever since Sean said that thing, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it from the Black Superman episode where it's like, why can't a woman write Superman?
Sure.
Like, why can't a woman write Batman? Like, has there ever been a woman who wrote Action Comics or Detective Comics ever?
It's a weird slippery slope thing where it's like stay in your lane, write your category or whatever, where it's like, okay, you're a white man, you can write a white man character. You're a black man, you can write a black man character.
But it's bullshit because white men can also write black men or women or whoever they want. It's the other way where it doesn't work. And like, that's fucking bullshit.
Well, I think what Phil's referring to is the way that it appears to be what's being championed versus what's reality. So reality is that white men get to do everything. But what people seem to want is everybody in boxes.
Right. Because it's like Joelle Jones isn't Brazilian. Shouldn't she not be allowed to create Yara Flor?
John's about to say some shit like, oh, no, she is actually Brazilian. Thank you very much. Why do you assume she's not?
Well, it always circles back.
It's because I read about it, Kale. I know she's not. She went to Brazil and was inspired by Brazil.
It was that face he was making.
What it always circles back to is what Sean said earlier. Let's chill.
Yeah.
Stop taking comics so seriously.
Yeah. And my last comment is like, it's not even to disparage anybody who does want to see diversity, because we know that it is good, but I think that you have to be careful. Yeah, of course. And there's a million conversations that we've had that, like, I don't even feel like justifying it, but
well, if you're new, right? Like, if this is your first time, that's not where we're coming from on this. It's not about that.
Yeah, it's just it's about equality, man. And equality is not, equality doesn't tear anything down or take jobs away from anybody or, anything like that. It's about raising everybody up.
And like the idea that progress is not linear, right? That like this can be a win, but you can also criticize other things, right? That like Miles Morales can be a step towards that better future that we want, and not effectively not trying to attack people that are like trying to be on the right side of history, right? And trying to be an ally.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, shifting over to the Marvel side of things, there's been a new book announcement that seems to tie into Falcon and Winter Soldier, or at least tie into the hype around that series, because we're getting a Captain America title called The United States of Captain America.
Nice.
Yes. So this story will be told by Christopher Cantwell, a newer writer on the scene who's been making waves through his Iron Man series and his Doctor Doom series. Is going to team up with Dale Eaglesham, who is, of course, a well-known, well-regarded artist, to tell an interesting story that Marvel says will celebrate the character's incredible legacy by bringing together various Captain Americas from throughout the years for a grand adventure to find Captain America's missing shield and solve the mystery of his masked thief's plan. The incredible saga kicks off when Captain America's shield is stolen. No one understands the value of the shield like those who've wielded it, so Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson set out on a road trip across America to chase down the thief. But instead, they find the captains, everyday people from all walks of life who've taken up the mantle of Captain America to defend their communities. And for some reason, the shield thief wants them all dead. Can Sam and Steve get to them first? So that's Marvel Solicit. I do want to read a tiny bit of what Christopher Cantwell had to say. It's an incredible gift and definitely a creative challenge to take on the character of Captain America, especially during these unprecedented times in our country. With this miniseries, we're hoping to explore what the idea of Captain America means at this precise moment, not just on the grand stage of the world, but to everyday and often overlooked communities throughout the United States. The story is ultimately structured like a road movie. It'll see Steve Rogers and soon Sam Wilson and later other key members in Steve's life getting to directly interact with those he represents as a symbol and has sworn to protect, but in an up-close and personal way he hasn't experienced in a while.
Sounds like fun, honestly.
Yeah.
I like the idea of there being different communities that take up the mantle, like within, because it sort of brings it harkens to the idea of like the small town like watch, the neighborhood watch kind of situation where, you know, you're sort of here for your community and here for your people in the same way that Captain America is, you know, here for the United States as a whole. There's like that similarity there. I thought that was a cool sort of premise, and definitely something that would be interesting to explore, like how it all sort of affects it just affects these different places because the US is so, it's just large.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's something that I don't know that I really necessarily recognized was such a uniquely American thing. But like the whole like cross country road trip and being able, like, that is a very, like, there are many countries that are as big as us with as much
road,
but also like diversity of community and landscape as well, right? That like you driving in like the American Southwest is completely different from like the American Northeast, or even the Northwest. And the idea of Captain America and, you know, all of these Captain Americas, kind of, I don't know, taking this trip across the country that they're supposed to represent the values and humanity of, feels like a really rich area. And a cool way to celebrate the character and its legacy, you know, because like Cap is one of those characters that, like, obviously so tied to Steve Rogers, but like there have been a lot of other characters that have meaningfully carried the mantle and had their own kind of lasting imprint on what Captain America is and means.
That's right. So that's why I can't wait to see where Frank Castle ties into this.
I can't wait to see Sam and Cap doing joining a tailgate.
Yeah, I would actually love that. Captain America shows up. He just like picks up a keg, drinks the whole thing, and crushes it on his forehead. You know,
that'd be pretty sick.
Sam, those wieners done?
I'm a little trepidatious about this because, first of all, I feel like I just don't like superheroes on road trips. I remember when there was that one Superman story by
Straczynski.
Straczynski, where he was just walking around and just chatting with people, and it was supposed to be Superman reconnecting with, you know, America, and I just did not like it. I wanted so badly to enjoy it because at that time, Straczynski was my guy, and I was like, all right, he's on his way to DC. He's starting with Superman. This is my way into Superman as a character. I've never really read him before. Can't wait. Thought it was not great. Then after Secret Empire, they did a similar thing with Captain America, where he was trying to get people to once again believe in him, after the fake Cap, you know, destroyed his reputation. And I believe that story was told by Mark Waid. And similarly, I just felt like it didn't have any type of edge or
no heat.
No heat. Yeah, it was heatless. And I suspect that this will be similar, especially with the flimsy premise of Captain America's shield getting stolen.
The shield is gone.
Yeah, that's it.
He needs the shield.
I'm sure it's super easy to steal Captain America's shield. Like, would he fall asleep and he woke up and it was gone? You know, like
He
It
woke up and his
happens.
hands like in a glass of warm water and his shield's gone.
I peed myself.
No. He calls up Sam.
You ever read Hard Traveling Warriors, Green Lantern, Green Arrow? It's the
Hard
it's
traveling
the
heroes.
Hard Traveling Heroes. Did I say Warriors?
Yep.
Damn.
It's like
It's the quintessential road traveling book.
Yeah, but that's by a team of good people.
Okay.
Damn.
wow. You're really about to just throw that disrespect around?
Denny
mean,
O'Neil and
it's-
Neil Adams, two
it's-
legends.
Yeah, two legends. So that's
I mean, you
Even
could
they would
have
agree with
said that instead of two good people, because what you said was incredibly dismissive of Christopher Cantwell and Dale Eaglesham.
I think. Well, I'm not sure that Kale wasn't throwing shade at Mark Waid and Straczynski.
That's fair. Either way, it's
I
you're
mean, sure, yeah,
taking swipes.
as well. Why not?
I don't endorse that.
Like I like Straczynski a lot. His Spider-Man run is my top tier. But that Superman run sucked. And Mark Waid, for me, hasn't written anything good in about 20 years.
Damn, there it is, folks. There's the shade.
Okay, all right.
Shade Master.
I sincerely hope that you never have to encounter Mark Waid in person. Because
That'd be so sick.
if you do, I can assure you that he will yell at you.
I would love the idea of Sean.
Listen.
Like we meet Mark Waid and Sean's just like, oh yeah, Kale said you haven't written anything good in like 10 years. What do you think about that? And he just starts fucking yelling at him.
Yo.
He just beats the shit out of Kale, and we're also like dumbfounded. We just watch.
Now we have to film that on YouTube.
I would be blessed.
This is the excerpt for the show.
Please, Mr. Master Comic Writer, beat me up with your magic and let some of your talent beat off on me.
Beat off on you, eh?
Now I'm just imagining him with like a rich man's, like he has like one of those canes, you know, that you always see like cartoonishly rich people, like it's like a Cobblepot kind of thing, and he's just wailing on Kale with this fucking cane.
Boy, this took a turn.
It got Sean to
Never
smile.
mind. Wow. All right. Well, that took a dark turn.
It took a turn.
Is Tom King writing this episode?
Speaking of darkness,
Jackie.
WandaVision just wrapped up,
wrong book.
and that opens up a door, and it opens up a door to the Darkhold, which is of course an item in the Marvel universe, kind of similar to any of the like the Infinity Gauntlet or the Cosmic Control Rod, in the sense that it has immense power and that oftentimes characters will seek it out to utilize it for their nefarious means.
And it's like kind of a nod to like the Necronomicon, like it's that kind of like ancient evil magic book.
Sure.
Very similar to Marco's Trouble Enemas.
Yes.
Oh.
Same amount of dark energy.
This really did take a dark turn.
So last year, it was announced that we would be seeing an event centered around the Darkhold, simply called Darkhold, and it would begin with Darkhold Alpha number 1. And this was the solicit. Darkhold sees Dr. Doom unearth the ancient Darkhold, a text written by the elder god Chthon, and unintentionally opening a passageway for Chthon to return to our dimension. To enter Chthon's dimension and fight him, the heroes must read from the Darkhold, which drives them insane. The creative team behind Darkhold Alpha number 1 was Steve Orlando and artist Cyan Torme. And then after that, we would get 5 one-shots with each of the heroes that Wanda brought on to help her stop Doom, those being Iron Man, Wasp, Black Bolt, Spider-Man, and Blade, and then wrapping up with Darkhold Omega number 1. COVID, of course, stopped all of that from occurring, but now it appears as though we might actually be getting it after all, with the event listed as being released in its collected form on January 25th of 2022, which means we probably would get this event rolling here in June. Marvel hasn't actually announced that that's coming, but I think now's probably the second best time to release this event. The first best was absolutely just before or during WandaVision's run.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say was had this been announced like previously before the show, I wouldn't be interested because I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't care. But with the context of the show, this is appealing to me.
Yeah, like if it was coming out like this week or like next week, that would have been fucking perfect.
Yep.
Or like even last week when you're like in the fever pitch up to the finale and you're just like, I'm hungry for more, you know? I saw so many people tweeting about Vision that week, you know? Go check out our book club.
I really like Scarlet Witch. I don't think that she gets a lot of due in the comics. So an event that's, you know, primarily focused around her and kind of trying to, you know, do something heroic is interesting. Especially in light of the X-Men and what's going on with them and how they see her. So I wonder if there was or if there would be any type of desire to kind of further that narrative through this book. Notably, she doesn't choose any X-Men to help her out.
Yeah, true.
In the, I think it was the Empire crossover. She goes to Genosha to try to resurrect mutants that she had a hand in killing, but that's the last X-Men thing that I know of happening anywhere near that realm.
Yeah, was she there to resurrect the dead that died during New X-Men, or was she there because, like, who was she there to resurrect specifically?
Dead mutants. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It was all garbage. I don't remember.
It would make sense that it would be like the Genosha genocide stuff to me, at least. But
Yeah.
Because the turning point of House of M was really just that she took away
their powers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their
So
mutants.
surely it would have been the Genosha incident or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, because she technically didn't kill anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I am interested in it from that perspective, Sean. It's something that, go check out our WandaVision review for kind of the full conversation on how it relates to the show and everything. But, I think it's clear, like, with WandaVision, and obviously no spoilers, that they're trying to position her as a more prominent character moving forward. And kind of, she's kind of been in the background, like she's been an Avenger and she's been in a lot of stuff, but like she's never had a solo feature. We haven't gotten a lot into her and her world and powers and all that stuff. So like, I feel like that's going to be a thing we see in the movies moving forward. And I imagine that they will try to, similarly take
synergy.
Take advantage of that in the comics. And, this I think is a clear effort, right, to be made there, putting an event that does circle around Wanda. But I think the X-Men of it all is going to be really interesting because of the way that they've kind of like disconnected her from the mutants and mutantdom, but now they have the rights back to those characters. So like, is that a thing that they're going to want to make a reconnection for so that they can then use her to put over more X-Men in the future? It kind of, I could see it going either way. I could see them doubling down on no, she's not a mutant, she's her own thing, magic, or, kind of backdooring her back into the world of the mutants so that there's that synergy and that connection to, oh, hey, when we bring the X-Men to the MCU, we already have a breakout character in Wanda,
Yeah, we're all big fans of Nightcrawler around here. Have her finally hook up with Nightcrawler because in an alternate reality, they have Nocturne as a baby. We can finally make that happen.
Yep.
There's your link back to the X-Men.
Pete's wearing the shirt, so
actually just noticed Pete's awesome T-shirt. So if you're on YouTube, you can see. Pete, you should take a picture of yourself with that on and post it on social.
I'll throw it on the
It's pretty
Instagram.
cool.
It's the three mutant laws, guys.
Yeah, is that
That's
law
number
number two?
Murder no man is law number 2.
Oh, I've been saying it wrong for years.
It's the first law, guys. It's the most important law.
Oh,
so
damn,
it's
is it
obviously
really
the
the
first law. Make more mutants, guys.
Hell yeah.
Bad.
It
Oh
was
my
the second one they
God.
came up with.
No.
You know,
The X-Men are horny as fuck. Any real X-Men fan can tell you that.
it's because I didn't get the book physically, Sean.
You don't remember.
It probably is.
Yeah.
It most likely is. It just
Probably what
didn't
it was.
retain it. I've actually read studies that do show that people retain their information better when they read something physically versus digitally.
That's why I'm at the forefront of that adoption, though. I want to aid the next generation of humanity to adopt that digital mindset, you know?
I thought you were talking about
And
law
I-
number one.
We need
I
those
just want to forget.
scanny eyes.
All right. Well, speaking of Scarlet Witch and WandaVision, there's been a lot of charged opinions and conversation about the show and how it's played with fans' expectations and desires in some ways that haven't necessarily pleased audiences. So we are going to discuss that idea and how much storytellers and creators have to contend with audience expectation when they're crafting their stories, and what our responsibility is as fans as we engage with a lot of this content. So we're gonna dive into that. And by the way, we won't be spoiling WandaVision in any real way, at least not the finale or anything like that. So don't worry about that as we dive into this topic. So again, without spoiling anything, WandaVision has played with fans' expectations for sure.
Sure.
And we've talked about in the past that Marvel has a tendency to do that. The first big example I can think of is in Iron Man 3, where the Mandarin is not really the Mandarin from the comics, and they promoted it as such. They promoted the fact that we were going to get the real, we're going to get the Mandarin. It was going to be this really cool thing, Iron Man versus his greatest enemy. And then of course the movie comes out and it turns out that that's just a guy playing a guy. And it was a swerve, and again, Iron Man 3 made $1 billion, but I think that there were a lot of people who are the more initiated among us, who read the comics and whatever, who saw that as a slap in the face, especially because at least at that time, I'll speak for myself, and I remember reading forums and a lot of people expressing similar ideas, that it felt as though Marvel used our knowledge of the comics to hype us up, only to swerve us and ultimately disappoint. So that was the first time. Then we had things that were certainly lesser examples, but the way that they alter trailers to show Thor having both of his eyes when he had lost one in the Ragnarok trailers, I believe. And then something very similar happened with Infinity War, where they show Thanos' gauntlet and he doesn't have a full gauntlet in the trailer, but in the movie it's a different story.
Or like that shot of Hulk running, and like it ended up being the Buster armor actually, and like that was a total fake out.
Exactly. And things like that are different only because they're not narrative, right? That's just the trailer. And so you can glean as much as you want, but until you've seen the actual product, those are just more like,
it's marketing material.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. With WandaVision, it's slightly different than that, because the one thing that I feel like we have to kind of address in this conversation is a spoiler. So if you haven't seen anything at all, then do skip ahead. But the Evan Peters Quicksilver thing,
right?
That's something that a majority of us did not know was going to happen beforehand. It did leak, but most of us just didn't know. And obviously, Evan Peters plays Quicksilver in the Fox movies. He was cast here to play the same character but different in WandaVision. And that set up all these massive fan theories that none of which panned out. None at all. There were the WandaVision commercials that seemed to suggest, and when I say commercials, I mean the commercials within the show that seemed to suggest all sorts of different possibilities, none of which came to pass whatsoever. The idea of there being someone behind Agatha, none of that came to pass. Mm-hmm. So many different things that you can point to that didn't go anywhere. It has fans upset. And so my question to you, all preamble out of the way, is how allowed are we to feel upset in these situations? And is it wrong of Marvel or Disney or whatever to do that kind of thing, to set our expectations with certain things and then circumvent them? And do they have to be more cognizant? Is there a part of these companies that has to be aware that the things they do are going to lead to people having expectations and that they should tread lightly around them?
Well, I'm ready to come out hot on this one out of the gate, just because I'm frustrated by this entire discourse as a thing, and it's something that for me as like a fan of media in 2021, like I'm exhausted hearing about it. I'm really tired of people like prognosticating and making fan theories and then being mad when the thing that they wanted doesn't come to pass. And it's not a thing that's like unique to the MCU. It's not a thing that's unique to comics or comic media. I think it's worse in them because there is this source material that you can look at and extrapolate from and think, could this mean that? Could this be a nod to that? And like hyping yourself up into a frenzy and then getting mad about it not being what you wanted it to be. And I think that like companies are kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't, right? Like when you are making something that has an established media property that you're pulling from, there's always going to be some level of like that fan culture of like looking at the trailers and picking them apart and examining things that are not meant to be examined that closely, and and projecting meaning onto things, or in some cases there being actual meaning or being nods, being red herrings, and taking that as gospel versus as a potential outcome of what's happening. And that's part of the game in this day and age. And I think I think you made this point, Sean, or in this episode or a previous one, that like that's just kind of how it is now. And like it's always gonna be that way. Like the conversation, the YouTube videos, the CBR articles and stuff, there's a culture around this stuff that's not going anywhere. And I think like, especially as you see the MCU now transition from film to television series, it's more susceptible to that because they're week to week. And it's not a thing that there's trailers and there's this quiet period and then it's out and you know what it is, right? We've been engaging with WandaVision for 2 months, not knowing how it was going to end or what it could be or what the stakes could be or any of those things. And to me, like that not knowing, that mystery, those questions, that was part of the fun. That was part of the enjoyment of watching the show week to week. And certain theories not panning out or whatever doesn't retroactively make me not enjoy the content that I engaged with and like the conversations that we had around it. And I don't think someone's wrong to be disappointed, but I think that if you were one of those people that is like obsessively in the weeds looking for everything and then not all of those things come to pass, you set yourself up for that disappointment. And I also think that it's worth pointing out that some of the things that we saw, some of the threads that were laid, the MCU is not one piece of media, right? There's all these other things coming out later. We know that this movie ties into Doctor Strange, potentially to Spider-Man later on, all these other things where like some of these threads could be picked up at a later date, right? Some of these things are going to come back into relevance again, and we can't talk about that here because of spoilers, but I don't know. I think when you ask what's the responsibility of fans, it's like to just maybe take this shit a little bit less seriously.
Well, I will say because I pretty much agree with everything you said, Pete. The one thing that I can understand why there's anger is, again, this is a spoiler for this last episode of WandaVision. So
Let's not do that.
well, there's a thing in the last episode that, there's all these theories about where things are going to go, and it amounts to a dick joke. And that, to a lot of people, felt like salt on a wound. Like Marvel deliberately pulled the rug out from under people for a reaction. So, I mean, is that okay? Because you have these droves of fans speculating for 2 months, and Marvel knows what it did. Disney and the Marvel Cinematic Universe knows what it did, and effectively pulls the rug out from under you and pours salt on your wounds.
But I think that's only to the people who don't predict the right thing, right? Because I'm sure there are people who also predicted what ended up happening, right? So then to what extent does Marvel have a responsibility to those people? Because then the same question needs to be asked. And do they react in the same way? Are they happy because of it? Are they upset because of it? Should they have a reaction to it? I pretty much agree wholeheartedly with what Phil and Pete said. And I just like to adding the fact that other people thought the right thing, and should there be a repercussion for them thinking that now?
Kale, do you want to get a word in here?
Well, I can't imagine that Marvel or Disney or any of these companies feel responsibility at all. They set out to tell their story, and just because a bunch of, nutty fanboys had a bunch of conspiracy theories that they, made thousands of YouTube, comments and videos about, didn't come true. They're just happy there's conversation.
Sure.
So I to me, like, yes, there is an element of the fan responsibility, as you guys are saying, but I think if Marvel hadn't set that precedent at that same time, it might not be as bad as it is.
When you say that precedent, you mean the expectation
of something else happening
within the series or within the MCU in a broader sense?
The way they do these things. Yeah.
Sure. Just wanted to clarify.
Not necessarily WandaVision, but the, like Sean's, brought up the Mandarin, and every film now is, oh, who's gonna show up alongside, and this guy's in Alabama shooting this for whatever, and it's part of a hype train that gets you to the next one. That's fan, and it keeps them part of the conversation.
Go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, and to your point on them wanting to build hype, that ties into exactly what Sean laid out about altering the trailers. You want them to go in a certain direction because you're gonna get that conversation, because ultimately that's what they care about, is that conversation. And then when you do present them the material, whoops, and they don't care because they don't hold responsibility for that. But again, they move the conversation so drastically that they get a lot of mileage out of it.
Hype is a really dangerous thing in media because it builds up expectations to an unachievable level 9 times out of 10. It's very rare when there's hype around impending product that it delivers on the people that are the most enthusiastic about it. However, that said, it's not too dissimilar from like a WWE thing where people will fantasy book matches and storylines, and things don't turn out the way they want it, and they get really mad. They swear off the product, but they don't swear off the product because the people who are the most dedicated to these things the company has those people by the balls.
So I definitely consider myself among the crowd of nutty fanboys, as Kale put it. And my entire life, I've always been a person who, did spend time on the internet theorizing and watching trailers over and over again to find, pieces of things that that I could use to better understand what was coming. And, I think that at that time, there wasn't a lot of that culture didn't impact the way that those movies were produced. I don't feel by and large, those movies were made, and we did what we did on our end, but studios weren't exactly concerned. And that shifted. That definitely changed. And I think Marvel was the forerunner of that change because of the relationship between these movies and the comics and the fans. These movies are way more, certainly not slavish, but way more willing and comfortable to adapt the source material than a lot of the movies that we saw in the 2000s and before that. So there is a desire, at least it appears, to keep fans on their toes, to not do the exact same thing that happened in the comics, to switch it up for a variety of different reasons. And a lot of those are valid. But I think that there's a world of difference between trying to hide information, like how many stones Thanos has in Infinity War, not revealing that in a trailer, versus showing you, versus saying the Mandarin's going to be in a movie and then it just not being the Mandarin. I think those are very different things. And I think that to say that fans shouldn't or don't have the right or whatever to be upset by things like that, I don't really think that's fair, because it wasn't like fans said, based on the information in front of me, I think the Mandarin's going to be in this movie. Marvel said the Mandarin's going to be in this movie.
Right. So
when the Mandarin's not in the movie, for fans to be upset, I don't think is unrealistic at all. I don't think that that's weird at all.
It's like being sold something that you buy on false information.
Exactly.
To me, though, I see that as being different than the conversation that's happening around WandaVision right now.
How is that any different than the Evan Peters situation?
Because I think they didn't tell us that, right? Like, they showed us that information, and then, like, I remember we had a whole podcast about it where we're like, well, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Is this him? Is this the Quicksilver we know from the Fox universe? Is this our Quicksilver in a different body? Is it a total figment of, Wanda's powers? Is it a total figment of potential enemies' powers? We went through all of those potential theories, and I outlined the theory that ended up being correct, and that was what I thought was probably going to happen. And to me, like, I don't think it's the same thing, because it wasn't like they were like, here's Evan Peters from, like, we brought that to it. And I'm not saying that wasn't.
Wow.
That's intentional. I think they wanted us to bring that to it, but I don't think it's the same as, like, advertising the Mandarin as the villain of a movie and then, it's not really him, it's some other guy. Like, I do see those things as being different.
I think that the casting of Evan Peters was deliberate.
I agree.
I think that the fact that that storyline resolves the way it does shows you that it was a troll. And I don't think that there's any other way to look at it. Think about how that storyline resolves in WandaVision. How can you say that was not a troll?
That's I don't think that's the same thing, though.
But I asked you something specific. Is that a troll?
Yeah, it is. But I don't think it's the same bait and switch, though, in that way.
I think the only difference is that one is a movie and one is not.
No,
I don't agree.
Yeah, because to your point, Mandarin was, okay, we have an answer for the question, who's going to be the villain, let's say. Whereas here we were presented with a piece of information that wasn't a directive as to who this person is. We were presented the information in the context of what was going on. Like I think a more apt comparison would be if they didn't mention that Mandarin was going to be in the movie. He was in the movie, and then all of a sudden it turned out he wasn't actually the Mandarin. I think that's a more one-to-one comparison.
Yes.
Than
it's the literal same thing.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And that being the literal same thing is not the same as the two current comparisons of the Mandarin being announced as the villain, and then therefore when it turns out it's not him, people get disappointed. Whereas this person being brought in to the show during production as the narrative gets unfolded, and then is presented to be a troll or a play against those expectations. I don't think those things are equivalent.
Yeah, I don't either, because I think to me what that is like it's more of a narrative red herring, right? Of like I agree it was a troll, it was a fake out, but it was to like get your mind going in a direction that would then subvert your expectations
in a way that by and large has been disappointing to fans who were clued in. I don't think that that's wise.
Yeah, but I mean I don't know, I guess, but like I think that plays into the broader conversation we're having. You know, that like I think that it reminds me of the discourse around Last Jedi. That's episode 8, right? Rian Johnson, Star Wars. Yeah. It reminds me of the discourse around that, where it's like there's expectations set, and then this doesn't meet those expectations. So what though, right? Like, it's like, does every single thing that's set up need to be something? Or like, is there like, are we then making the argument that like creators can't fake us out, that they can't like try to make us think one thing is happening and then subvert those expectations and present something else to surprise us? You know, like,
I don't think that the Last Jedi or Disney did anything to set fan expectations around that movie in any particular way. I think people were upset because they didn't feel like that movie was Star Wars, and that's a completely different conversation. In this, they cast an actor who everyone would know was famous for playing the same character that he was playing in the show, and then it was, then things went how they went, and it was ultimately a troll. That was a deliberate action versus Star Wars just putting out a Star Wars movie and people being disappointed.
No, but because
there were a lot of people mad about fan theories from the Force Awakens not coming true.
But you're not listening to me. I'm saying that Disney did not do anything to put anything in your mind. They put a movie out, and fans ran wild with their own theories before the movie came out, and those didn't pan out. This is very different than that.
But I would also argue if we're considering people in the know, that we have precedent where we have two characters who are MCU, or two actors who are MCU figures who have also been in other productions outside of Marvel. So then there could be an expectation of, well, this character is not the recast of Pietro could just be a red herring because of this other information, right? We have that precedent.
Wait, what are you saying?
He's saying that because Pietro was cast didn't mean that because Evan Peters was cast as Pietro, it didn't mean that he was the same Pietro, and that we knew that was a possibility. Because
we also have Cap, who played Johnny, and then no. But if we're supposed to be considering people who are in the know, right? That is a possibility that like that's not an invalidating factor.
He was cast as Captain America. If Chris Evans was cast as Captain America, right? And then fans said, "Wait, what if he's the Human Torch?" That would be absolutely stupid.
Right. So why would that not apply to this?
Because they didn't announce his casting. They showed him us and said he was Pietro, and then he wasn't.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't announce. They didn't announce like They just presented Cap, Evan. What do you call it?
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans as Captain America, and no one thought that he was Johnny Storm
because they told us who he was.
He was cast as Captain America.
They made a movie called Captain America: The First Avenger. Cast Chris Evans. You think people were gonna think, "Oh, that's Johnny Storm"?
No.
Yeah, exactly. Sean is right in the sense that when they dropped Evan Peters on Wanda's doorstep, he was Quicksilver.
That means something. Yeah.
Marvel fans definitely thought en masse that this could be some greater multiverse thing with the Fox merger. Now, Pete and Marco, you guys guessed correctly what the swerve was going to be, but that doesn't change the fact that Marvel deliberately was trying to stoke hype from its fan base. It was very cognizant of trying to drum up a conversation.
But I guess my question is, like, why is that bad? Like, because I mean, like, and again, to your point, Sean, I'm not saying that you're wrong to feel unsatisfied by that. But I guess, like, the argument that, like, creators should anticipate that and, like, try to avoid it is something that, like, just doesn't jive with me. Because, like, I think the fact that there was that question and we had that dialogue, that made that episode more interesting and it made it more exciting to talk about. And, like, I found that to be rewarding, you know? And, like, yeah, like, it didn't mean that. It didn't mean that there's a connection to the Fox universe or whatever. But, like, okay, that's fine.
What did it mean?
It did. I mean, what did it mean? Like, in the grand scheme of things, like, nothing. That's the thing.
That's the point.
But
That's
I mean,
exactly
but
the
again,
point.
like, that's a storytelling device. Like, that's what a red herring is, you know? And
But it's not. It's not that. It's that it didn't mean anything. It didn't have value, and then they trolled us. So it feels like a slap in the face. It feels like we knew what we were doing. We did it on purpose. We wanted you to feel this, and then we're going to make fun of you at the end. That's how it feels. And if you don't feel that way because you did not take it to mean what they expected us to take it to mean,
Sure.
then that's on you. But I took it as that. I took it as you're trying to send us a message, especially with the messaging around Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Sure.
There's every reason for fans to have thought that. And by the way, it's worth pointing out that Marvel's certain people at Marvel, whether they be Paul Bettany or Matt Shakman, who was the creative director of WandaVision, spent the last week driving back fan expectation for the finale. They spent that time trying to say, hey, Paul Bettany said I was trolling with certain things that he said about, and Matt Shakman said, hey, we're not necessarily going to be able to, a lot of you guys had amazing theories and, we're not going to be able to satisfy all of them. They satisfied none of them. And I think that is why the discourse around this series has turned into what it has, because this is really it's really kind of like the second time that this has happened. And both instances have been for Marvel, where the fans do feel trolled. And I don't think that that's something that should be dismissed. But we're here to discuss what is the responsibility on both sides. Yeah. And so Pete said he doesn't feel as though there's any responsibility on the side of the creators. And I think that I personally feel like your fans caring about what you do is a precious thing and not a thing to take lightly. I think that the fact that there are millions of people who enjoy these movies across the world and spend their time thinking about them is something that every single person involved should be grateful for and shouldn't treat as a troll. I don't think that should be something that gets played off for jokes. And I think that there are spaces where that can work. WandaVision is very much a mystery box television show, similar to Lost. And Lost fans had very similar reactions when Lost did certain things that it did.
I feel like that setup for a show, though, is like inherently dissatisfying. Because, like, I think it comes back to Marco's point where no matter what you thought, if it wasn't what you thought, you're going to be disappointed. So, like, I do think the responsibility is on the fans in that case, where it's just like, I don't think we should, like, hype ourselves up into a frenzy about a thing and then be mad when it doesn't come to pass. And, like, I think what you're saying is valid in terms of, like, that, like, there's a balance to be struck there, right? And I think, like, there's an argument to be made, like, maybe this missed the mark. But I don't know. Like, I just feel like you run into the opposite problem if they don't do stuff like this, where anybody who's in the know knows exactly what's going to happen, and then it happens, and then, okay. And, like, I don't think that's satisfying either. I liked the idea that I didn't know what was going to happen and that it could swerve me, and that, like, I could have this expectation that something might happen, and then when it doesn't, it's surprising. And, like, that's satisfying to me rather than, like, always, like, the one for one, you know, or like giving us exactly what they tell us they're going to give us, you know. I kind of want to be surprised. I want to have things feel fresh and not just, you know, what I always think is going to happen.
Sean, if Marvel continued to swerve audiences like this in a dissatisfying way that you felt was deliberate, would they eventually lose your patronage?
Let me add to that. Not in the way they did with this boner joke. In a, you know, strictly in a dissatisfying way, not in like a trolly way.
I mean, I've been dissatisfied before with certain things like that, but for me, it doesn't really it doesn't really ever cross the line from like that wasn't that cool to like anger. Whereas in the two instances that I've highlighted, it did.
That's what I'm saying. So if it happened with more regularity, would it lose you?
I mean, I don't know, man. I would have to. I can't really speak to where to where I would end up. But you know, I do spend a lot of my time invested in this stuff, and it does matter to me tremendously. Yeah. And it does feel like pissing on that.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how you go into some of this stuff as like a. Like if you're someone who reads comics and you're into all of it, I don't know how you go into it flat like that, where you just like where you have no emotion about the outcome. I don't know how to be a fan like that.
Now I feel targeted.
Well,
Preach.
I mean, yeah, for me, it's like it's not going on with no emotion. It's just like being open to the story that they want to tell versus like what I want it to be, you know,
or expect it to be.
A blank slate, as you will.
Yeah, it's like not to go in with a completely clean slate, right? Like that's impossible, right? Everybody carries baggage into a piece, and like that's just how it is. But I do think that like I feel as though I am less I feel less burned by that kind of thing in general. And I think it speaks to you asked me about this with like the Invincible show. Right. And it's like how The Walking Dead approached it, where like that swerves in a lot of ways. The comic is way different than the show. And like you might hit similar beats, you might have similar characters, whatever, but like it's not one for one. And there are things that happen in the books that you might not get to see come to the show. Right. And vice versa. And like that is kind of an expectation that I think maybe got set for me as being a fan of the Ultimate Universe, and that like I'm not that precious about anything. You know, like are there characters I like? Yeah. Are there ways I want to see them represented? Absolutely. But I'm also open to different interpretations and like for my expectations and my desires to be subverted. And not, I guess, like have that, that feeling as though my personal investment has been like disrespected, you know? I totally get feeling that way. And I felt that way about other things, but I think when it comes to like the MCU in general, I don't know. I like it a lot, and I've certainly connected with it a lot over the years, but like it's not a thing that like I feel that charged about in terms of like, because you asked last week on We Watch WandaVision, like, what do you want out of the finale? And I was like, I just want to see it. Like, I don't really want anything, you know? Tell me what you're going to tell me and let me know what I should think, and I'll decide how I feel afterwards, I guess, you know? And I guess that's just where I'm at with them as a property, you know? I get more out of hearing your theories than making my own. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. That would be cool. But I'm also like, if it doesn't happen, that's one of a million things that could have happened, right?
So I think that there's a world of difference between the MCU, for example, not being one-to-one and what we're talking about, because the MCU's never been one-to-one. And that's something that some fans can't even accept that. And I have a lot of friends who I've had to talk off the ledge because they just can't get with the fact that it and the DC universe do not do exactly what happens in the books. But I think that them not being one-to-one is something that I've long accepted and think is generally good, because not all of the source material makes sense for movies, and not all of it is like good in the way that movies have to be good. So that's cool, but I feel like an expectation in this regard is different, because this is not like the Evan Peters thing doesn't exist in the comics, right? That's an entirely separate thing, than having an expectation based on something that you've already engaged with.
Sure.
And I think for me to answer the ultimate question is like where the responsibility is. I think that the responsibility is just in respect. Because if I'll just say this, like if WandaVision only sought out to tell its specific story without doing those types of things, I ultimately would have had a lot more fun with it. Because then I could have focused on just the narrative that was being delivered and not any of the like wild, wacky stuff. I'll give you a perfect example. This is an absolutely perfect example. Spider-Man 3, right? Spider-Man 3, and I'm talking about the one that's coming out.
Wow.
There's been no promotion of Toby or Andrew Garfield or any of that, right? There's been no promotion of Doc Ock or Electro, none of that. They have not said one word about that. So let's say there were no trailers, and let's say the movie came out, and none of that was true, right? And all of my speculation was a waste of time, and none of that materialized. I wouldn't care, because they did not tell me to think about that. I thought about that. I thought about it. I looked online, saw other people thinking about it. I put my own theories together. That's on me. I did that. But Marvel did not tell me to think about those things. In WandaVision, they did. And that's my problem.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I don't agree, but I definitely get where you're coming from. And like I don't think you're wrong for feeling that way.
So where do we go from here? Do you think, I guess, Pete, you've already laid out how you feel, but do you guys think that there are lessons to be learned on the part of Marvel from this experience? And, like Mandalorian, for example, was a huge hit, had none of these issues. Do you think that this is something that Marvel can learn from, or do you think that they probably don't really care?
I don't think they really care. I think people watch the show, and I think even in spite of the criticisms based around the swerves, they would watch it again. So ultimately, I don't think they care, and people will show up for Winter Soldier and the Falcon show. So
yeah, and I think I agree wholeheartedly with Pete, and I don't think there are lessons to be learned necessarily, because I don't think that, personally, I don't think that there was anything done that needs like an immediate reflection.
Yeah, I don't think they care. I think they care about the conversation and getting you hyped for the next thing for the next 20 years. It's the same thing they do with, their summits and their big MCU happy Disney day or whatever the fuck.
And people forget too. That's the other thing. I feel like that's what they bank on, is people forgetting things like this.
We're getting over it.
Yeah.
I will just say the last point I have to make is I hope they don't learn lessons from this, because I think whatever lessons they would learn would be the wrong ones. I think overreacting to fan backlash is like one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a creator. Like, listen to your audience, engage with your audience, but like, to Phil's point, I think there are just as many people that walked away from the show really loving it. So.
All right. Well, how did you feel about how WandaVision wrapped up? Did you enjoy the finale? Did you enjoy the series? Given the way that it ends, did it impact how you overall feel about what you watched? let us know, and beyond WandaVision, because I think this is a conversation that we've had and will continue to have as this stuff becomes even more dominant somehow. Is there an expectation or is there a responsibility on the part of these studios to be precious with how you feel about things? Write into us. Let us know your thoughts. You can get us on social at The Comics Pals, wherever you're listening to this. Be sure to leave us a like and drop us a comment there as well. Certainly, you can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. You can get us on YouTube if you're watching there now. Thank you very much. If you're not, head over there. Both camps can like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps us out a ton, and it's free to do. So, give us a boost. We're ever appreciative of that. Join our Discord server. Come hang out with us over there. We actually just had a fan, a listener, join our Discord server who's a long-time listener who heard our weekly call to join, and finally took the plunge. And I think you guys should consider doing that. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. So with that, let's get into the plugs. Pete.
Thanks for joining us here on another episode of The Comics Pals. If you want to connect with me, I'm at @loud_Pete on Twitter and Instagram. Come chat with me about how you felt about WandaVision. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed reviewing it here with Sean and the rest of the crew. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And, if you want to get some more content from me, you can head over and check out the Potscast, weekly Nintendo podcast that I host. We're talking about the 4-year anniversary of the Nintendo Switch this year. And then, of course, you can also go catch my band, Long Friend, Time Friend, dropped an album last week. It celebrated its 1-week birthday this week, and we had a really, really great reaction to it. Lots of people were reaching out, getting played on the radio and stuff. I've been really, really overwhelmed by the response. So if you are interested in checking it out, it would mean a lot to me, and I'd love to hear what you think, even if you hate it.
Pete, don't be shy. It's hot fire.
Thanks, bud. I appreciate that.
Marco.
Yeah, Kale got skipped. Go ahead, Marco.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Marco. Go ahead, Marco.
You can follow me at Toto and Toe. That's TOTOINTOW.
Damn, what the hell am I gonna say?
Follow me. You can look at my website, kaleward.com, and come talk to me
Don't
about
go there.
everything Super Sentai.
I feel like he doesn't promote that every week, so.
Yeah, don't go there.
Oh, don't go there.
But do come talk to me about Super Sentai. I'm very into that conversation. Hey, the new series of Super Sentai has one guy, and the rest of the Sentai Rangers are the Zords.
Oh, wait, what?
What?
Weird.
Wild.
That's cool.
It's wild. Let's talk about that. Oh, and Mr. Marco Animoto on Twitter and Instagram.
Come to the Weeb channel where we're actually doing an Akira read along every week on Sunday. We're going to be chatting about it. We just started volume 1, so if you're listening to this and you've read or want to catch up, you're only 1 volume behind. So definitely come join. It's ongoing. We're going to try to do some more read alongs. We are watching Jujutsu Kaisen
Nice.
as well. Watching and reading for those of you who are caught up with the manga, and of course Attack on Titan. So always doing some sort of group activity there.
All right. Phil.
I just watched Akira for the second time not too long ago, which takes the first half of the first book and the last half of the last book. Great stuff. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CyberBebop. Hit me up and just let everyone know how much you love my opening bits.
Let everyone know. Shout it from the mountaintops.
Shout it from the mountaintops and let them all know how my conspiracy theory about Zack Snyder is probably correct.
All right. As for me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram only at Sean Soapbox. Definitely hit me up to talk about your feelings about WandaVision. And last but not least, guys, definitely do tune in to We Watch WandaVision if you want to hear what we have to say about it ultimately. If you want to hear our final verdict, tune into that and listen to our reviews this week. We've got 3 big books to talk about: Berserker #1, Infinite Frontier #0, and The Swamp Thing #1. So lots of cool stuff happening in comics this week, and we're really thankful that you guys are choosing us to engage with these comics and these conversations. So with that, we're the Comics Pal signing off. Take care, guys.
See you next week.